Okay, everybody, welcome to the Sermon Slam 5782. Woo! No body slams here, no slamming anyone's reputation or intentions. Is there anyone here who's never been to a Sermon Slam? Okay, you're in for a treat. And the treat is listening to people in your community who have something to say about a theme that was chosen for tonight, which I had nothing to do with, but is really appropriate for Shavuot. The talks are short, 3 to 5 minutes, and they could be teaching, musings, creative, rap poetry, song, a story, something to do with the theme. And tonight's theme is community, connections, and belonging, which is totally fitting for Shavuot, when with all of our imperfections, B'nai Israel gathered as a community at the foot of Mount Sinai to listen to and absorb the precepts and teachings that would bind us even more closely together then and now. One of the hallmarks of Judaism is the primary importance of Klal Yisrael, the entirety of the Jewish people, and how our lives are intertwined with each other, how we bear responsibility for each other, how we support each other, maybe how we fight with each other. Jews use the we form in most of our prayers, not I, but we. And the 10 Commandments give equal importance to the mitzvot that connect us to each other as the same importance as that they do to the 10 Commandments does to those mitzvot that connect us to God. So I am just serving as the MC to keep things flowing. We have 4 scheduled slammers and 1 substitute at the last minute. So we're going to start with our theme of community, connections, and belonging with Matan Lerner. Matan, a member of a local Lexington family, is a freshman at Gann Academy. He will speak about Parshat Ki Tisa and about our connectedness to God and each other. Matan.
Happy Shavuot, everybody. Thank you. And yeah, thank you all for having me. So tonight we're gathered here to celebrate the giving of the 10 Commandments. And right afterwards, we see the events of the golden calf story, which many of you all know, beginning with Moshe ascending Mount Sinai and not returning when expected. But one aspect of this narrative kept drawing my interest. In Shemot Lamed Bet Daled, the Torah reads, "Vayakach me'adam ve'yatzar oto b'cheret, vayasehu egel masecha, vayamru ele Elohecha." He took from them and cast it in a mold and made it into a molten calf. And Aaron said, "This is your God." What I found most interesting about this story is the way in which the Torah describes the relationship B'nai Israel had with this new deity. In order to create the Egel HaZahav or golden calf, the nation is forced to put in resources or gold to actually create and feel a connection with their God. Sforno, a 15th century Italian commentator, emphasizes the conditional nature of this partnership. Commenting on the phrase Ela Elohecha Yisrael, or this is your God Israel, he explains that Israel would need to serve the idol to obtain their needs. Similarly, often our modern prayers are built around bakashot, or requests for things we are looking for. While I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing, I believe it may also be helpful to pray as an expression of gratitude and not always with the intent of receiving something in return. In this way, we aren't viewing our connection to God as purely what we could get out of it, but rather seeing it as more mutual. I believe we could take the same idea portrayed in how we should be towards God for our own interpersonal relationships. Similar to B'nai Israel worshiping the Egel HaZahav or us reciting prayer solely with a request in mind, we should try to avoid viewing relationships with the mindset of what you could solely benefit from them. A healthier partnership is one that allows for both partners to be in open communication and viewing the connection as less contractual and more reciprocal. As B'nai Israel were led astray by looking for something concrete in the golden calf, we all too often see our relationships as methods to gain status or the feelings of being loved. Like focusing on the action that goes with one's prayer, we can also emphasize the giving in relationships rather than focusing on what there is to gain. The great psychoanalyst and philosopher Erich Fromm describes a healthy approach to love as one's own power to love produces love, just as being interesting makes one interested. Just as being interested makes one interesting. In turn, our gratitude and giving of love without the expectations of a return will end up benefiting both partners. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Matan. Great way to start off the evening with a little bit of topless and heavy thinking about this stuff. Our next speaker, Leon Gunther, born and raised in New York City, a 1960 graduate of City College of New York with a PhD in physics from MIT in 1964. Leon was a professor of physics at Tufts University from 1965 till 2013. Now let's just think about that. That's amazing. He was a violinist in many community orchestras, including principal second violinist for 10 years in the Newton Symphony Orchestra. Leon has been a member of Emunah since 1979 and is the founder and director of the Makela at Temple Emunah, which is Emunah's resident choir. Leon will talk about his love for the Makela, about the deep camaraderie among its members, and about its contribution to Emunah, to retirement homes and nursing homes, and to the Lexington interfaith community. Leon.
God, I can't see too well. The theme being community connections and belonging, I suppose, is connected to, can be regarded as a divrei Torah in the sense that being together is response to the need in our religion to be connected with each other. As you heard, I'm going to talk about the Makela. I can't read with this. Thank you. In 1994, we had a wonderful rabbinical intern by the name of Rob Scheinberg. One of Rob's contributions to our temple was his leading a small a cappella group after our Shabbat Kiddushim. I was amazed at how well our inexperienced members could sing songs having many parts. When we became clearly aware of Rob's imminent departure, my wife, Joelle, strongly encouraged me to continue Rob's leadership. I consented, but with great concerns for my lack of experience and my limitations. I gave the Makela its name, which is the Hebrew word for chorus. Its name continues to defy dependable, correct spellings. In spite of its 28 years of existence. I would like you to know why the Makela is so dear to my heart. Within 2 years, in 1996, after compiling a significant repertoire, we gave our first grand concert at the temple. And as of today, we've sung hundreds of songs covering a great range of genres, from the liturgical to Israeli to Yiddish and to classical, in Hebrew, as well as Yiddish, Ladino, and even Russian. I'd like to highlight some of our very special venues. Since 1994, we have been a major contributor to our Yom HaShoah memorial services. Consequently, our participation has helped me deal with the pain I have about the Holocaust, about the Shoah, and have the opportunity also to express myself musically. In particular, at these services, we have performed with instrumental ensembles a number of movements of the Brahms Requiem, which was originally set in German, but which we sang in a Hebrew rendition that I produced. And these Hebrew renditions give me pride about the Jewish origins of parts of the New Testament. Since the late 1990s, we have performed for senior citizens at retirement homes, including the Hebrew Rehabilitation Center for the Aged, Newbridge on the Charles, and Waterstone at Wellesley. Only those who perform as we have can appreciate the incredible pleasure we experience observing the joy of our audiences. Since 2009, we have sung at the Lexington Interfaith Choral Fest. Choruses from various religious denominations, Christian and Jewish, share their music with the audience. Our songs, our singing is always received with great appreciation from our non-Jewish community. And I deeply feel extremely proud about the richness of Jewish music and the message of the Jewish religion that we give them. I feel that the Makhelah is a special messenger of Emunah to our neighbors. And what about the members of the Makhelah? They joined because they had the desire to sing in a group. They came with a wide range of skills, sets, and backgrounds. Those who had never before sung in a chorus learned that they could do so. They improved greatly in their ability to listen to each other, to learn from each other, and to improve on their intonation, that is to say, to sing in tune. And they had the opportunity to form a community within the larger Emunah community. Let it be known to you that we have had members of the Makhelah who weren't even members of Temple Emunah. So you can appreciate why I love the Makhelah, because of the music we make together, both when we share the passion we have for music during our rehearsals and during our performances. But most of all, I love the Makhelah because of the closeness that its members have for each other. Gathering for a rehearsal is an opportunity for us to become updated about the latest going on in our lives, both good and bad. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leon. I will just echo what Leon said as someone who's been singing in choruses for over 50 years. So I share that sense of the joy and the connection that music can bring to all of us. Now for something sort of completely different. We have a pinch hitter who's known as, at least if not one of Emunah's resident stand-up comedians, Hal Miller Jacobs.
Yeah. Just turn it on. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Can I take off my mask? Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. So the rabbi is walking down the street and meets Moish. Moish, how you doing? Moish, you're not married. How old are you, Moish? I'm 37, Rabbi. Moish, wouldn't you want to? You're interested in a family? That's what Judaism is about. It's about family and community and whatnot. And wouldn't you want that? Moish says, yes, Rabbi, I really, really would like that. So how about it? He says, well, really, I've been trying. I went to JDate, and I went to Match.com, and I met a couple of people that I liked, and many of them, when I introduced them to my mother said, "Oh, she's not too good for this. She's not like that. It's not like that. It's not a good match." So I really don't know what to do, Rabbi. Rabbi says, well, in rabbinical school, we had a course that tells us how to deal with these things. And one way to deal with it is I'm going to suggest something to you that you really love your mother and you respect her. Yes, of course, Rabbi, of course. He says, well, I'm going to suggest that you use Match.mom to find someone. Well, what's that? He says, well, your mother is a very sociable woman. She has lots of friends. Why don't you ask your mother to ask her friends to find someone who might be suitable for you? Okay, you try that, Moshe? Yeah, I'll try that. I'll try that. 6 months go by. Rabbi's walking the street. Hi, Moish, how you doing? Oh, all right, Rabbi. Moish, anything new? No, nothing. Same. Moish, did you try Match.mom as I suggested? He says, yes, I actually did try Match.mom, and I met a lot of lovely women, and we hit it off well, whatnot. And one in particular was particularly appealing to me. We hit it off. And as a matter of fact, we did really, really well. She had a lot of similarities to my mother. She actually talked a little bit like my mother. She walked like my mother. She even cooked like my mother. She, in some strange way, there was a resemblance. She even looked like my mother. No, Moish, what happened? No, it didn't work out. Why not, Moish? It sounds like it was a perfect. My father couldn't stand her.
Stunned silence. Woo! Thank you. Thank you. So now that you've had a little taste, think about what you might want to do at next year's Sermon Slam. You have a whole year to prepare. I don't know what the theme will be, but there's room for almost anybody here who has something worthwhile to say. Our next speaker is David Shrebnick, who has been a member of Temple Emunah since 1993. He is currently completing his 18th high year as the 8th grade math teacher at Schechter in Boston. David has been volunteering for USY in Massachusetts since 1984, and for many of those years, he has shared sage advice for teens in character as Rebbe Shrebi, who unfortunately could not be here tonight. David has given over 2 sermons at Temple Emunah and is looking forward to sharing his thoughts tonight in a sermon entitled, Do Communities Need Aid? David.
Well, if I were to channel Rebbe Shrebi, when Rebbe Shrebi speaks, he always tells a joke first that has nothing to do with what he's going to say. I've told this joke to 3 people. They all laughed. So we'll try it again. So there's a Dear Abby column in our local newspaper. And I always hated the questions and the responses. The responses seemed so canned. And I don't know, they didn't seem genuine. So I thought that I would write my own letter. So I wrote, Dear Abby, I live in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and I met a woman who lives in Vermont, 300 miles away. And every week we would exchange visits. One week I would go to Vermont. The next week she would come down to me. This week there was some confusion. I thought that it was my turn to go to Vermont. She thought that it was her turn to come to Connecticut. So we both got on the train and we're both traveling. Now, if her train was traveling 74 miles an hour, okay. So the word community appears 482 times in the Sepharia translation of our Torah. And when you look at the Hebrew, though, the English word community is the translation of several different Hebrew expressions. According to etymology.com, the word community originated in the late 14th century and was taken to mean a number of people associated together by the fact of residence in the same locality. It is derived from the Latin communitas, which means being the same, or communis, or related to common, meaning to shared by all or many. The translators, however, in translating various expressions to community, have given it different shades of meaning. So in Devarim 14:21, we read, "You shall not eat anything that has died a natural death. Give it to the stranger in your community to eat, or you may sell it to a foreigner." And the word that was the Hebrew words that were translated to community were goyim bisharecha, which is the nations within the foreigners within your gates. And that's what the translators took as community, and is probably the closest expression to the original meaning of the English word. In Shemot 19:6, we read, "And you, the leaders of Israel, shall be to me a priestly kingdom and a holy community. These are the words which you shall speak to the leaders of Israel only." And in this sentence, the word community is a translation of the word goy, nation, in the sense of goy kadosh, a holy nation. What I saw most often in the small amount of research that I did in about 15 minutes was that community was used to translate the word Edah or Adat Yisrael. And I wondered whether the word Edah or Adat were related to the word aid or witness. I was informed by a member of the Judaic Studies class that this is probably not, so we'll call this a midrash. In Shemot 12:3, we read, "Speak to the community leadership of Israel, Adat Yisrael, and say that on the 10th of this month, each of them shall take a lamb to a family, a lamb to a household." It is used in the context of the story of the Exodus from Egypt, as in Shemot 12:19, "No leaven shall be found in your houses for 7 days, for whoever eats what is leavened, that person, whether a stranger or a citizen of the country, shall be cut off from the community of Israel," Adat Yisrael. And in Vayikra 19:2, we read, speak to the whole Israelite community, Adat B'nai Yisrael, and say to them, "You shall be holy, for I, your God, am holy." Over and over in the Torah, community is referred to as Adat Yisrael. The use of the word Adat, which contains the word aid, witness, perhaps defines what makes the Jewish people a community. It's not that we all live together in the same place, because we don't. Rather, we're bound together because we have witnessed great miracles, Exodus from Egypt, the giving of the Aseret Debrot, horseradish at the Kiddush that's really hot, and also entering the land of Israel. And rather than thinking of Temple Emunah members as being bound together just by the coincidence of our location, we're bound together by what we have witnessed, all of our shared experiences. That's what makes us a community.
Thank you, Rebbe Srebbe, even though supposedly he didn't arrive. I'm not sure that's the case. Our final speaker tonight is the woman who organized this event for us, Mayli Solomon. Mayli is a public scholar and founder of the Talking with God Project and the associated Living Our Beliefs podcast. The project and podcast explore the lived religion of Jews, Christians, and Muslims so as to better understand how the observant live their lives and practices and values. She has an educational and professional background in business, fine art, language training, and editing. In addition to an MBA from Northeastern University, she has a Master of Jewish Liberal Studies from Hebrew College. Mayli grew up in the Boston area and returned after 20 years living in Seattle, Washington, and Berlin, Germany. She has been a member of Temple Emunah since 2017, currently serving as co-chair of the Ladle Fund on the membership committee and participates in Minyan Katan. Mayli will talk about her sense of Shavuot, community in various congregations, and how it's brought her a sense of connection and belonging in different ways. Mayli.
Can you hear me okay, or should I get up on the stand? All right, there we go. Thank Liliara. We're standing at Sinai, on the cusp of becoming a people by receiving the Torah, God's gift to us and the guidebook for living. We're told that all Jews, past, present, and future, are experiencing this moment together. If that's not the essence of community, connection, and belonging, I don't know what is. My own experience of these words has been rather more prosaic, yet still powerful. In my family of origin, a non-observant interfaith household, being part of a group was seen as a crutch, something only weak people needed. It wasn't until university that I began to explore my religious identity. Needless to say, it's been a long road. A big element of that exploration has been about finding a home beyond a family or work associations. Synagogue membership has provided that anchor for my Jewish identity. Since joining for the first time in 1998 at the ripe age of 39, I've been a member of 4 synagogues, including Emunah, 1 lefty reform, and 3 conservative egalitarian. Each has provided community in their own way. Beit Aleph Meditative Synagogue in Seattle was the first. Having never been a member of a congregation, everything was new. But since it appealed to interfaith families, the uninitiated and alike, it proved a good starter community. It wasn't long before I felt at home, got involved, and made friends. Becoming a bat mitzvah in 2006 brought me more under the chuppah of the Jewish people. But the next step completed that. Joining Congregation Beth Shalom, my first conservative shul, near the end of my time in Seattle, required going before a Beit Din on account of my Protestant mother. That's a whole other story, but passing that meant that I could join a shul that matched my needs. The more serious engagement with the liturgy and practice while being egalitarian has suited me well ever since. A bonus at Beth Shalom, as with the others that followed, was a heavily academic and professional membership and an active lay leadership. I've appreciated the many opportunities for smart conversation and learning. Moving to Berlin, Germany in 2009 radically altered my experience as a practicing Jew, as you might imagine. Finding the Oranienburger Straße Synagogue was a critical piece in my preparation, promising a religious home in a foreign land. It was powerful to be part of rebuilding Jewish life in Berlin, a counter to the history of death and Jew hate. And given its small size, a norm in Germany, showing up made a difference. The constant stream of visitors from abroad was another way it was a different experience. I loved the mystery of who I might meet. An American family on a heritage tour, a school group from France, a writer from Israel. That said, building a social network was a long, slow process. This reflected German culture more than anything particular to the congregation, but made for some lonely times nonetheless. Greater ease in finding connection and belonging was one of the things I counted on when I moved back to the US after 8.5 years. While I loved my time abroad, the international community, starting every conversation with the agreement about language, and simply living in Europe, knowing that I could go about my life without straining to understand a conversation where the cultural context was welcome. I had other things to pay attention to. Emunah has provided that new home, a sense of community, connection, and belonging, and I'm grateful. All of the congregations have enriched my Jewish journey, building up my knowledge and practice, opening new perspectives. I plan on staying put for a good while, but the intellectual, spiritual, and personal growth will continue, God willing. Thank you.
Thank you, Maylee. We have a few minutes. If anyone here would like to either react or share something that's occurred to you during these talks, please feel free. And if not, L'Shana Haba'ah, let's think about next year's Sermon Slam. I think it's a wonderful event where you get to meet people in different ways than you do usually sitting in shul. And think about what you might want to contribute. And I guess the theme usually comes out maybe a month before Shavuot, so people will have time, and you can see it doesn't require a PhD in Jewish studies. So Chag Sameach and enjoy the ice cream.